What's up everyone, Michael here with another topic video. Today we're going to be talking about how Mobius Final Fantasy is on PC, which is a bit strange. It got released on Steam, and if you don't know what Mobius Final Fantasy is, it's basically a mobile game. It's a mobile Final Fantasy, as Mobius would suggest, and it is actually okay. It's not terrible. It's okay for a mobile game at least. That said, though, it's kind of strange to see it on PC, but I guess why not? So today we're going to be looking at it and talking about kind of what this means and possible future implications to this sort of thing happening. Now, the port of it is actually fairly decent as well, which also super surprised me. It's not like super terrible or anything like that. It's actually fairly decent. Like, it runs perfectly fine. Obviously, the quality of it is fairly low because it is on mobile. You know, the specific complaint that I have when it comes to quality is the voice acting. Some of the voice acting is great, like the fairy in the game that is one of the protagonists, I'll talk about it a little bit later, is actually, you know, fairly well done, and there's certain side characters like the announcer at the very beginning of the game, very, very well done, and it sounds like, you know, a Final Fantasy game, a little bit lower quality because it's, you know, compressed to be on a phone, but at the same time, it is fairly decent. And then the other half are just meh, just absolutely terrible. Like the main protagonist, I think they kind of did it intentionally, but he's a very emotionless and just kind of doesn't really flow with the rest of the characters. The moggles in the game sound very strange and just don't really have a lot of emotion to them. And maybe that's just the English voice acting. Maybe the other languages are better, but that's kind of my experience with it. But yeah, so basically it is a turn-based little game that you're able to click on targets, or rather tap on targets, and you're able to use different abilities as well. And the game actually kind of has its own little depth to the system because it introduces elements, different types of classes and stuff like that. I'm not going to talk too in-depth about how the game plays, but it's essentially how I described it when I first played it is turn-based battles the game. So you basically go from Battle 1 to Battle 2. You had that map that you're able to explore, and there's certain regions where you're actually able to just kind of like free walk and stuff like that. But for the most part, it is mostly just a bunch of turn-based battles right next to each other. And it has a semi-interesting story as well. The story is kind of, you get descended into this world and you have no clue what's going on, and it's sort of self-referential in sort of a strange way. Like the main character is kind of like, why is all this stuff happening? And everyone's like, oh no, this thing has to happen, and it has to happen this way because it's how the prophecy says it. And he's just like, why is that? And it was actually kind of funny when I first played it. Now, when I first played it originally, back in its release window, which was back in, I believe, September, and I haven't played it since then. And back then, they only had 2 little story sections available, and then the rest of the game was locked off for updates that were upcoming and everything like that. And so I mostly played just a bunch of the combat stuff, some of the exploration things that they had during an event at the time. So I don't really know how well the story progresses either, but it's a fairly decent game on mobile. That said, it's not a fairly decent game on PC. There are tons of games that are a lot better to play on your PC than this one. But if you are looking for kind of to try out this game, it's actually not that bad of an experience. It's actually kind of fun. It's very, very simple in the way that it is. And yeah, but let's go ahead and talk about the port specifically. So the port specifically is actually fairly decent. It runs super, super well. Obviously, it looks lower quality and everything like that. Some of the textures look like they may have been up-res, like the ground texture and stuff like that is super blurry on the mobile phone, but maybe that was just an update that happened to the game in general. And the game kind of functions as well, like fairly well. You also have key bindings and controller support as well, but it seems to be mostly partial. You can do all the combat and stuff like that. Like I can just let go of my mouse right now and I can actually do all the combat stuff, including using my abilities, but it's very, very strange because it doesn't show any of the key bindings on screen. And so you have to like look at the key bindings or kind of experiment to figure everything out. And it plays decently with them. What button is it going to be to use that ability? There it is. It's the B key to use that ability, while WASD uses your target reticule, and then Q is to attack on normally. So it uses like Z to B to using all your abilities. It's very bizarre, but it works, and so I'm okay with it. So that's perfectly fine. It's something that I would be like, you know what, this is the kind of key binding I would give the game. Also, here's one of the random effects that you can get. If a combat lasts long enough and you end up doing well enough, the little fairy that follows you around, which I believe is named Echo. I need to heal. Hold on, which one is that? That's V. There we go. Then they'll actually give you special effects and stuff like that, especially during boss battles. You also get these little orbs, and these orbs are used for different sort of abilities that you see on the right side. So you collect these element orbs by attacking different enemies, and certain enemies might have like an element affinity that will give you different types of orbs. You can equip different types of abilities as well, and these different abilities will have different affinities that will make it more likely to get different sort of spheres and things like that. You can also generate them with different abilities, and it's actually fairly in-depth for what it is, although the gameplay of it is fairly simple. But yeah, the port is fairly decent. It actually plays fairly well. I haven't tried playing with the controller yet. because the key binding isn't working. It's not detecting my Xbox One controller, which is a little bit strange, and it's mostly probably a problem with me because I'm using some experimental drivers for the Xbox One because I couldn't get it to work with another game that I'm currently playing. So that's how that goes. But for the most part, it seems like the keyboard controls work. One thing that's kind of strange is I can't move around the map with it. I have to use the mouse for that, and you can't really do the menus either. So if I go in my cards, because this is how all the abilities are working with, you know, you got skill panels and things like that, you can't navigate all of this stuff, but it has class leveling and things like that. Like, it is a Final Fantasy game, which is kind of interesting. It's just that it is a mobile game, so it's a little bit lower quality. But yeah, like your card deck, this is how you do all your abilities. You're able to look at them and it'll be like, oh yeah, so it'll enhance different abilities and things like that. It's kind of interesting. Now, for the PC specifically, one thing that they did interesting is that normally on this left side of the screen, you see the guy kind of standing there. This is normally what you would see on mobile, and then you click a different screen and it brings you to the map. Now, for the PC version, they actually made it so that it's split screen like this, which is actually a very, very interesting way to sort of do things, and something that I haven't really seen mobile games do a lot. Normally, when it is a PC game, or when it is a mobile game brought to PC, they'd have just kind of like the basics. It would just be the game and then put into a larger resolution. They wouldn't upscale anything like that. But for here, they've upscaled everything very, very well. And you can see here is the normal sort of settings as well, but they've removed the quality settings, and so there's no actual like graphics options available outside of the other Windows configurations where you're able to go into landscape. And they assume that's because it's a mobile game. It's going to run fine on anybody's machine if they have a modern hardware. So yeah, you can also change the resolution, which is going to be your only graphics options here, as well as temporal aliasing as well. So that's pretty much how that goes. It has online multiplayer and everything like that. Like, they've done a ton of updates to this game, but I'm not going to be able to talk about it critically because I don't know that much about it. However, there is one thing that I sort of want to specifically talk about, and that is the screen orientation option. Now, you're able to start it into portrait mode, but it doesn't really do anything for me. I mean, it switches it back to the way it was on mobile, but one thing that kind of makes me wonder about this Solaris screen orientation is I'm wondering if this is actually an engine thing. Like, this may be the engine that they used for the game, and they didn't really have to do too much modifications. They obviously had to create some new assets, upscale everything and stuff like that to make it work on PC. But this makes me curious, as in, does this mean that they might end up bringing other ones over? Because it would not be the first time. We've seen Bethesda with the whole Fallout Shelter thing. I think it was called Fallout Shelter, which is also coming to Steam, by the way, or not Steam, but it's coming to the Windows Store as a global app, by the way. So if you have an Xbox One, you can actually play it on there as well, which is kind of interesting. Yeah, as you see, I clicked on an area and now I'm at a white screen. This is a bug I have never seen before. So I have no idea how I'm going to get out of this. I can't. Oh, I can attack. Okay. Well, okay, so it's a little bit buggy apparently. All right, and we are back. So I learned one lesson. Don't mess with the graphics options while you're trying to play the game because it will crash on you or give you rendering bugs. So yeah, that's a thing that happens. So sorry about that. My rendering thing, if I ended up cutting that out, basically the rendering, it stopped rendering the game. It just showed a white screen. I could see like health bars and UI and stuff like that, but I couldn't actually see combat. So I'm just kind of had to reboot the game. So that is a thing that happens, I guess. I don't know if that's because I tried to switch my graphics options. I think it was because I switched to screen orientation mode, just because I wasn't paying attention and stuff like that. But it does support resolutions. It says on the Steam page, by the way, it also supports up to 4K, which I don't know why you'd play this game in 4K, quite frankly. I should be playing this in a window, to be honest. But regardless, we'll just go ahead and move on. Now, back onto what I was talking about with that one graphics options, I think this is actually an engine feature to where the game actually, you know, is built on an engine that could be used for other games as well, which means that we could see a lot of more cross-platform games on mobile and on PC from Square Enix. This isn't the first time that we've seen it. You know, obviously other games have done it, but like, I've always kind of questioned why they didn't just bring it to PC in the first place when it can work. One game that I'm specifically playing right now is Monster Super League, which is a game I'm super into. How do I change my target? I don't actually know how to change my target. Do I have to click into target view? Oh, I do have to switch into target view. So you have to switch into target view to switch targets. I don't remember that being a feature. I guess that, actually, yes, I do remember that. That is the same on mobile, so that's not just a PC thing. You actually have to do this. It also has auto battle as well, so if you just want to auto battle things, you can do that. But once again, you know, I've been playing Monster Super League for quite a while now, and I actually enjoy it a lot. So if you're looking for a recommendation of a mobile game, there you go. I actually have a full review of it. I mentioned it in one of my other videos, and I forgot to talk that I had a review. But anyways, regardless, I have a review of it, and it's actually fairly decent, but it's not on PC, which is super frustrating because it's actually a really good game. I would play it on PC, which I do. I use an emulator to play it on PC because I'm not going to have it constantly on my phone. And I just don't see what's stopping them from bringing it onto PC. Now, obviously, Mobius Final Fantasy is not being well received right now because it's the launch. It has a bunch of server issues. You just saw one of the graphics issues that happens in the game where it stops rendering. So, you know, it is a little bit buggy on the PC end of things so far, but I don't see it kind of affecting its future. I could see it very well, like, into the future being, you know, maybe not a great game. Obviously, it's a mobile game and it's okay. It's not bad, and I enjoyed playing it. But at the same time, like, I don't see why not. Because if they can have it on PC and have cross-platform saves, which happens, I actually have the same save on both devices. You can't play on more than one device at a time, but regardless, I have the save from my phone file save, which is why I have so many skill seeds and everything like that, and have so much stuff. And so, like, I don't see why, because I love the idea of being able to play a game on my phone and then coming onto my PC and being like, I'm going to play it on my PC. It's one thing that I really, really liked about, like, let's say the Windows Store. The Windows Store sucks, but it does have the cool idea of being universal Windows apps, which means that you could play it on any Windows device. And so when I had a Windows phone, there were certain applications to where I could be like, oh, I can use this both on my phone and on my PC, you know, and it would actually cross all the settings and everything like that between devices, and it was actually pretty great. And I'm noticing with, you know, using emulators for Monster Super League, it's like the same thing. You know, it has ways that the servers are able to tell who's playing what. This game, Mobius Final Fantasy, I can cross-platform the saves. So if I go ahead and load it up on my phone right now, it has all my save data because it's all server-based. And with servers being so important in AAA gaming, I know it sucks for single-player games and stuff like that, but in games that are multiplayer, because yes, Mobius Final Fantasy is a multiplayer game, there's a whole multiplayer mode. I haven't even played it yet because they added it after I stopped playing it, so I kind of want to try it, but apparently it's live multiplayer where you fight bosses and stuff, and it sounds kind of cool. But regardless, you know, I just don't get why they don't end up doing it, and most of it probably comes down to technical knowledge. I could see, like, for Monster Super League, maybe the developer doesn't know how to develop for PC, or maybe they don't have a market in their main region. But at the same time, like, I don't think it matters if you can end up having it cross-platform. Maybe it's a support problem. Maybe that is, you know, one of the big things where they're like, oh, well, I don't want to have to support PC and mobile. You know, I'd rather just support one and everything like that. And standards on mobile are definitely lower, so a lot of, you know, developers get away with lower quality assets and everything like that on mobile, where that doesn't necessarily slide on PC. But once again, like, I don't think that it would be a bad thing to have them on PC. I think the more games we have on PC, the more future-proof it is, because we're already seeing mobile games, like we have been for the last few years, to where, like, let's say iOS apps, you know, they've been like, oh yeah, you can't update it for the new phone, then it's not going to be available anymore. And so, you know, I want to not have that. I would rather have it so that it's like, oh yeah, let's play on PC, and just have a PC version that's always available. And that way your game never dies, it's just there. So, yeah, obviously server support could die, but still, you know, there's no harm in having ports, and I think I'm kind of somewhat excited to see what Square Enix ends up doing with this engine next, because, well, I'm probably not going to play Mobius Final Fantasy after today. Like, I might play it every once in a while now that it's on PC, just like, if I'm bored or waiting for something to render or something like that, I need lightweight games, and if I'm not playing on Monster Super League, then sure, I'll play this one or something like that, you know, It's one of those things to where, ooh, I got a new route, sweet. It's one of those things to where, you know, it's an interesting game, and it's worth checking out. And if you're into Final Fantasy, it's definitely one to look into, because it feels like a Final Fantasy game, even though it is a mobile game, and it has all the mobile, you know, mobile kind of, whatever as you calls it. I don't even know the lingo these days. What are they calling it? I don't know. The mobile BS is what I'm going to call it, but that's not really what it is. It's like the mobile kind of cash model and everything like that, so you can buy, like, random boxes and stuff like that. But it is free to play, so if it looks interesting to you, you know, no harm in checking it out. It is fun for a little while, and it has an interesting story, so yeah. And I'm excited to see, you know, what else. I just wish more games would come to PC in general, you know, not only from mobile, but maybe also from console and things like that. Like, PC is a dominant platform in the fact of compatibility, like longevity and everything like that. People are always playing on PC, and so having your game on PC is not a bad idea. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. This has been Michael with a topic video talking about Mobius Final Fantasy being on PC. I don't know what it's going to lead up to. I'm kind of curious if Square Enix is, like, planning to do more with this engine, if they're planning to bring other mobile games over. What's the other one that's popular from them? It's like Final Fantasy Record Keeper, right? I don't know. I think it's Final Fantasy Record Keeper. I know a lot of people want them to bring it over to PC, unless it already is, and I just never knew about it. But regardless, you know, people are looking for that one and hoping that that one comes to PC as well, which I never have played it, so that's a thing I can't really speak to. But I did play Brave Exodius or whatever it was, and that one was fairly decent. It was like classic turn-based sort of stuff as well. Too simple for my taste, so I didn't end up playing it for very long. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing to see on PC, and it performs fairly well. It looks fairly decent. The temporal is kind of blurry in the distance, especially when they do special effects stuff, but no, I can't complain too much, you know? It looks good for a mobile game. It's super simple for a mobile game. Like, for a mobile game, it's sort of complex, but for a PC game, it's fairly simple. But it's definitely fun. I'm enjoying playing it right now, so I don't know. I guess it's worth giving a look if you're into Final Fantasy and stuff like that, but otherwise, meh. A lot of people are giving it negative reviews because the servers are messed up. Cross saves aren't working all the time, and some people are getting put in the wrong region servers, so, you know, maybe we might have some problems for the next week getting into the game, but after that, I feel like that's just temporary problems, and it'll only get better from here. So, yeah, super excited. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more content like this one. You can also check out my impressions reviews. My most recent one is a review for Hyperdimension Neptunia Rebirth 1 if you're into JRPGs like Final Fantasy, except Neptunia is not Final Fantasy. Don't even try to compare it to Final Fantasy because it will not reach that standard. But yeah, if you're looking for other JRPGs to play, you can check out that one. That is a decent game on PC natively, and so yeah, although it is a Vita port. So I guess it's not natively on PC. Whatever. I'm going to say whatever I want to say. That's how it goes. Yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully this gameplay video has been interesting. And I will see you guys in the next video. I'm going to kill this boss with fire and it's ice. Yeah! He exploded.